All right, when we think of the World Cup today, we immediately picture ultra-modern, multi-billion-dollar stadiums, right? Pristine playing surfaces, global superstars arriving on chartered private jets. It's this highly sanitized, meticulously organized corporate machine. But in this explainer, we're going to strip all of that away. We are traveling all the way back to the very beginning, to the year 1930. The inaugural FIFA World Cup down in Uruguay was a tournament born out of sheer logistical chaos, absolute gritty determination, and just a pure, unadulterated passion for the sport. It was a time when players were literally factory workers, when the actual trophy traveled in a guy's suitcase, and when just reaching the pitch was a heroic feat in itself. Okay, let's dive into this. 15. That is the exact number of days European players spent trapped on a passenger ship just to reach the tournament in South America. Think about that for a second. There were no direct flights. In fact, commercial transatlantic travel by airship was outrageously expensive, totally out of the question for these football associations. If you wanted to play in the very first World Cup, you had to pack your bags, get on a boat, and literally sail across the world. Section 1. A mad dash to Montevideo, the logistical nightmare of 1930. So because of this massive travel barrier, organizing a truly global tournament was an absolute logistical nightmare for early football officials. To solve the crisis, 3 European nations essentially carpooled across the Atlantic on a Scottish-built luxury ocean liner called the Conte Verde. Just look at this incredible voyage. The ship departed from Genoa with the Romanian team, stopped in France to pick up the French squad, anchored in Barcelona for the Belgians, and then finally crossed the ocean to grab the Brazilians in Rio before arriving in Montevideo on July 4th. And honestly, perhaps the most amazing detail of the whole trip, FIFA President Jules Rimet was right there on board with them, casually carrying the actual Golden World Cup trophy in his personal suitcase. No security detail, just a guy in his luggage. Now, the sheer force of will required to get these teams on that boat is mind-boggling. Take Romania, for example. King Carol II had literally just seized the throne, and he decides to make the World Cup his absolute top priority. He personally granted amnesty to suspended players and hand-picked the roster himself. But there was a catch. His best players worked for an English oil company that flat-out refused to give them 3 months of paid leave. So what does the king do? He calls the boss of the oil company and threatens to shut down their entire operation in Romania if they don't let his amateur players travel. No way, right? But they folded, and the team set sail. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive gap between the pampered, hyper-athletic superstars of today and the pioneers of 1930. For over 2 weeks, these guys were stuck on a ship. They couldn't do any actual football training because, well, the ball would just bounce right into the ocean. So the coaches ran fitness drills on the ship's wooden decks. King Carol II, who apparently couldn't resist getting involved, even joined the players for kick-arounds on the boat. But ultimately, because of the massive investment of time and cost, only 4 European teams, France, Belgium, Romania, and Yugoslavia, braved the journey. Moving on to Section 2. First on the pitch, setting the stage for history. So the actual tournament kicks off, and it is just full of bizarre and wonderful firsts. On July 13th, 1930, Frenchman Lucien Laurent volleyed home a cross to score the first ever World Cup goal against Mexico. But listen to his words. He said, "I worked for Peugeot at the time, as did 3 of my teammates. We were still amateurs." He wasn't a millionaire athlete, he was a literal factory worker. He had to beg his boss for the time off work to go play. And when he scored, there were no choreographed dances or massive dog piles. They just briefly shook hands, congratulated each other, and jogged right back to the center circle. This structure of this inaugural tournament was incredibly bare bones too. Because it was so hard to get teams to actually show up, there were 0 qualifying rounds. None. All 13 entrants were just automatically accepted. And the venue? Well, the Uruguayans promised to build a massive 100,000 capacity stadium called the Estadio Centenario to celebrate the centenary of their constitution. But heavy winter rains severely delayed construction. It was such a frantic rush that the stadium literally wasn't finished when the tournament began. They were forced to play the early matches at smaller local club grounds while construction crews scrambled to finish the main arena. Section 3. The Divine One-Armed Hero. Hector Castro's legendary resilience. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the absolute beating heart of this tournament was the host nation's secret weapon. He's a guy who remains one of the most fascinating characters in the history of global sports. At just 13 years old, while working to support his working-class immigrant family, Hector Castro accidentally amputated his right forearm with an electric saw while chopping wood. It's a devastating injury, right? But instead of giving up his dream of playing football, he pushed through the despair, got back on the pitch, and totally adopted. Fans affectionately dubbed him El Divino Manco, the Divine One-Armed. Castro was just brilliant. He essentially re-engineered his body to dominate the game. He relied entirely on his left foot for incredible power and precision. He used his right stump for balance during quick, evasive maneuvers. But here's the really crafty part. In an era of incredibly physical play, he would secretly use his stump to push off defenders and gain leverage during aerial duels. He was this lethal, highly combative presence on the pitch, and get this, referees almost never called him out for it. And proving he was absolutely no novelty act, Castro scored the #1 very first goal for the host nation of Uruguay in their 1-0 opening victory against Peru. The stadium of 85,000 people absolutely erupted. Section 4, the River Plate Derby, Uruguay versus Argentina. That early momentum carried Uruguay all the way to the end, setting up a bitter, incredibly high-stakes rematch of the 1928 Olympic final against Argentina. The atmosphere leading up to this final was, honestly, genuinely terrifying. The tension across the Rio de la Plata was just palpable. Uruguay was defending their home soil and their Olympic honor in front of a packed, screaming local crowd. Meanwhile, thousands of Argentine fans were ferried across the river on special boats, stepping right into intense hostility. There were even widespread reports of fans arriving at the gates armed with weapons. The designated referee, Jean Langenus of Belgium, was so completely unnerved by the threat of violence that he actually demanded personal life insurance before agreeing to officiate the game. You literally can't make this stuff up. So the crucial point is just how deep the mistrust ran between these two teams. They couldn't even agree on which football to use for the biggest match in history. Seriously. Both sides were totally convinced the other's ball would give them an unfair advantage in bounce and handling. The referee had to broker a bizarre compromise right there on the spot. Argentina's lighter Scottish imported ball would be used in the first half, and your Uruguay's heavier English-style ball would be used in the second. And man, what a match it was. Just 12 minutes in, Uruguay strikes first to the absolute roar of the Centenario. But Argentina, using their own ball, remember, storms back with clinical finishing to take a 2-1 lead by halftime. But wait, second half, new ball. Uruguay comes out absolutely flying, tying it up at 57 minutes and then smashing home a brilliant strike from outside the box at 68 minutes to retake the lead. And then, the ultimate climax. In the 89th minute, Hector Castro, the one-armed hero who overcame impossible odds, rises up and heads home the final goal. 4-2 Uruguay. They are the first champions of the world. Section 5, the cultural aftermath. Bigger than just a game. What happened on that pitch spilled right out into the streets and changed South American culture forever. The fallout was immediate. Over in Uruguay, the government literally declared a national holiday, and fans partied in the streets for days. But in Buenos Aires, outraged fans rioted and actually threw stones at the Uruguay consulate. The crowds became so fiercely partisan and physically imposing in these regional derbies moving forward that stadiums had to literally change their architecture. They introduced the Alambrado Olímpico, a massive physical fence erected exclusively to protect the players and the referees from the absolute frenzy of the fans. But the impact wasn't just physical, you know? It was literary too. The passion of 1930 sparked an entire genre of football literature. Writers like Julio César Pubo, who wrote under the brilliant pseudonym El Hachero, or the Lumberjack, began documenting the sport in a totally new way. He proudly stated, "I employ a language, that same popular language, that could be branded illegal, grammar in hand. I am, then, a literary lumberjack." Football was no longer just some stuffy British gentleman's pastime. It was the vibrant, bleeding heart of the South American working class. And out of this era was born the legendary myth of the Garra Charrúa. Following their defeat, the Argentine press tried to explain away Uruguay's victory by claiming the Uruguayans played with an aggressive, almost savage roughness inherited from the indigenous Charrúa warriors. But rather than taking offense to that, Uruguay embraced it. It cemented their national identity as the ultimate, gritty, never-say-die underdogs. Let's move to and see how this builds. This raw passion fueled a really fascinating cultural debate. By 1932, just 2 years after the World Cup, novels like Domingo Sinali's 2-0 were being published explicitly debating the very soul of the sport. Was football meant to be played by the gentleman amateur, strictly for honor, pride, and sportsmanship? Or was it destined to become a ruthless business, dominated by result-driven professionals where victory is a matter of life or death and money dictates loyalty? Which leaves us with a pretty lingering thought as we look at the sport today. We have perfect pitches, we have VAR technology, and billionaire owners. But looking back at those chaotic boat rides, the factory workers, the kings threatening oil barons, and a one-armed hero conquering the world, I have to ask you, has the highly sanitized, multi-billion-dollar modern game lost the raw romance and fierce amateur spirit of 1930? Think about that the next time you sit down to watch a match. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep that curiosity alive.